The local contaminated sun sector. Look at that. Look how nasty that is already. October 24th continues. Must be like 12:30, 1 o'clock. You can see the bullshit getting microwaved and built up there. We got Norwegian spray lines, 7087. Gonna be dumping a load right through there, so we'll see what kind of magic happens. Once they dump. That's what Norwegian spray lines. Pretty hard to miss that big red nose. Very dirty. Some of that local sun Harvard sauce there. Clearly see that's a couple different concoctions. The local contaminated sun sector. Look at that. Look how nasty that is already. Pretty dirty dump. AI and Norwegian. Pretty dirty. What are you kids doing? Dump. Now you clearly see it has a different concoction than when they started over yonder. Might notice that's changed quite a bit. It's been a whole almost 4.5 minutes. Smoggy. Some more microwave bullshit heading this way. But let's look at this. Alright. We're going to go back to the... Let's look at this. Give you the video. Look at that. Alright. Today's technology, Stony Bear. Hey, Stony. Just got sprayed, Stony. Alright, so it's been about 5 minutes, 40 seconds. Document that. Or McDonald's, what you doing, buddy?
Please remember the world that you are now seeing, for this natural world is in jeopardy, and even if you are willing to help put an end to what you are about to see, you may never be able to see the world in the same way again. In the early part of 1999, an immense operation began, an operation using aircraft that many of us will find difficult to accept. This operation involves a dispersal of massive amounts of fine materials into the atmosphere, and the implications of these actions are grave and far-reaching, and they strain the limits of understanding. There will be counterclaims to the evidence that is presented within this film, and you will be told that all is normal and as it should be. There will be counterclaims. You will be told that there is nothing to be concerned about, and that all is as it has always been. Your eyewitness accounts will be dismissed as unreliable. This dismissal by claimed authorities and officials will be in direct contradiction to fundamental physical principles and your own common sense, but you will encounter it nonetheless. This dismissal now spans a time period of more than 5 years, and it accompanies a grassroots awareness that has been reached by millions of concerned and engaged citizens. From this point on, I urge you to use your own mind to reach your own conclusions on the truth of the matter. What you are seeing now is quite normal. These contrails are the trademark of high-altitude aircraft since the close of World War II. You notice that the condensation disappears fairly quickly, much like your breath on a cold winter day. This is as it should be, and as it has been. For those curious enough to delve into the physics, chemistry, and thermodynamics of contrails, this normalcy has a more thorough explanation. Yes, science and common sense do agree, and the balances of nature are achieved with this common phenomenon. And now we must take a different turn, a turn to explore an unusual world that now surrounds us, and yet a world that many of us remain unaware of. The atmosphere of this planet has been changed, and you are now being introduced to one of the main causes of that change. The aircraft at the upper portion of the screen is leaving a normal contrail, and it vanishes as any trail of water vapor is expected to. But beneath it you see an aircraft emission that is stationary, thick, continuous, and persistent, and it must eventually be concluded that it is not primarily water vapor. The environmental conditions for each trail are not exceptionally different from one another, and yet the result and impact from each trail is entirely different. The only logical way this can occur is if the trails themselves are very different from one another, and indeed they are. The majority of the footage that you are now seeing has been filmed in the high desert regions of New Mexico. This is an arid environment with very low humidity levels. It is, in fact, a classic region for conventional contrail formation. Contrails themselves can and do form easily in a low humidity environment. In the past, the passing of a short-lived contrail in the high, clear desert sky was an innocuous and frequent occurrence. Cold and dry conditions, exactly those conditions that are normally found in the upper atmosphere, are extremely favorable to contrail formation. The humidity levels of the upper atmosphere are actually relatively low, and is one of the very reasons that most clouds occur in the middle of the troposphere, being the lower portion of our atmosphere up to an altitude of approximately 7 miles or so. As this examination of our atmosphere continues, we will be now required to consider 4 types of events or phenomena. In addition to the customary existence of clouds and contrails, we must now consider a new entry, that of the aerosol. An aerosol is a solid particle in suspension, either in a liquid or a gas, and in this case we are considering the atmosphere as the gas to study. The aerosols will manifest in 2 primary forms, as an aerosol emission from aircraft and as an aggregate or collection of aerosols in the atmosphere. A suitable term for this collection of aerosols is an aerosol bank. It is known now that the persistent trails that form the subject of this film are primarily solid in nature and origin, and that they are not predominantly water vapor. A brief explanation of cloud formation will help us to understand why this is so. Clouds, that is, normal clouds, require 2 fundamental elements to form, particles and moisture. Clouds are not suited to form in especially clean air. They require particulate matter, called condensation nuclei, that act as a base for water vapor to adhere to. The size of these nuclei, for the process to be effective, must be extremely small. The size of these nuclei are on the order of sub-micron. For comparison, a human hair is 60 to 100 microns thick, and an asbestos fiber is a couple of microns in thickness. The other essential component for normal clouds to form is a minimum level of humidity. From numerous sources, this minimum is on the order of 70% relative humidity. Notice that the requirements for cloud formation and contrail formation are already entirely different from one another. This is because they are entirely different phenomena based upon entirely different physical principles. Contrails can and should form readily in clean, cold, and dry air. Normal clouds, on the other hand, require higher moisture levels and a particulate or aerosol base from which to develop. The radical transformation of our sky as a direct result of aircraft activity now forces us to address an entirely new set of conditions. Aircraft are now repeatedly dispersing materials into the upper atmosphere at flight altitude, roughly from 35,000 to 40,000 feet. These materials expand rather than evaporate, and they usually transform into an unsightful haze that over the recent years has decreased our general visibility down to ground levels. One of the remarkable facts is that this commonly now occurs at very low levels of relative humidity, on the order of 30 to 40%, instead of the 7. On the order of 30 to 40%, instead of the 7.
You're watching No More News.
His business empire was crumbling.
The headline was quite accurate. Welcome to the 90s, Donald. Because it was like you got whacked right in the face. It was amazing.
His empire could be at risk of collapse if the New Jersey Casino Commission decides not to approve Trump's bailout plan.
By the fall of 1991, all 3 casinos had filed for bankruptcy.
You know, I had a wife who was suing me for $2 billion. I had the banks, I had this, I had that.
Back in the 1990s, you owed something like $900 million. Your empire was pretty much
more than that.
You owed more than that?
975 was personally guaranteed. That was just the small part. That was the harder debt. But I owed many, many billions of dollars.
The leverage shifted dramatically over to the banks because it was no longer an issue of a bank and a piece of real estate. It was a bank and Donald Trump's actual survival.
Trump owed money all over town to 72 banks in all. Pomerantz represented them as a group.
How close was he to going personally bankrupt?
Very.
Trump makes a point of saying he never went personally bankrupt. But there's the reason why the banks decided to keep Trump whole.
We made the decision that he would be worth more alive to us than dead. Dead meaning in bankruptcy. We don't want him to be in bankruptcy. We want him out in the world selling these assets for us.
So you wanted him alive because he was the salesman and could best sell his own properties.
That's correct. We kept him alive.
I think bankers look at Trump as a promoter, not as a CEO. At least that's where I looked at him, and
Prime Minister Modi will agree that this has been a very productive visit for both of our countries. Earlier today, we expanded our defense cooperation with agreements for India to purchase more than $3 billion of advanced American military equipment, including Apache and MH-60 Romeo helicopters, the finest in the world. These deals will enhance our joint defense capabilities as our militaries continue to train and operate side by side. In our discussions, Prime Minister Modi and I affirmed our two countries' commitment to protecting our citizens from radical Islamic terrorism. In this effort, the United States is also working productively with Pakistan to confront terrorists who operate on its soil. Together, the Prime Minister and I are revitalizing the Quad initiative with the United States, India, Australia, and Japan. Since I took office, we have held the first Quad ministerial meeting. I guess you would call it a meeting, but it seems like so much more than that, an expanded cooperation on counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and maritime security to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. As we deepen our partnership with India, we remember that our two countries have always been united by shared traditions of democracy and constitutions that protect freedom, individual rights, and the rule of law. During our visit, we discussed the importance of a secure 5G wireless network and the need for this emerging technology to be a tool for freedom, progress, prosperity, not to do anything where it could be even conceived as a conduit for suppression and censorship. To guarantee that the infrastructure of the future is built in a safe, transparent, and accountable manner, the United States is working with a range of partners, including Australia and Japan, to create the Blue Dot Network, a major initiative to ensure countries around the world to have access to private sector-led, sustainable, and trustworthy options for high-quality infrastructure development, and that's what's happening. Another major focus of my discussions with Prime Minister Modi is forging bilateral economic relationships that is fair and reciprocal. Our teams have made tremendous progress on a comprehensive trade agreement, and I'm optimistic we can reach a deal that will be of great importance to both countries. Prime Minister Modi will agree that this has been a very productive visit for both of our countries. Earlier today, we expanded our defense cooperation with agreements for India to purchase more than $3 billion of advanced American military equipment, including Apache and MH-60 Romeo helicopters, the finest in the world. These deals will enhance our joint defense capabilities as our militaries continue to train and operate side by side. In our discussions, Prime Minister Modi and I affirmed our two countries' commitment to protecting our citizens from radical Islamic terrorism. In this effort, the United States is also working productively with Pakistan to confront terrorists who operate on its soil. Together, the Prime Minister and I are revitalizing the Quad initiative with the United States, India, Australia, and Japan. Since I took office, we have held the first Quad.
लफ्ज़ फीमा एब्रीविएशन है फेडरल इमरजेंसी मैनेजमेंट एजेंसी की। ये एजेंसी डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ होमलैंड सिक्योरिटी के अंडर काम करती है, यानी ये एक ऐसी गवर्नमेंट की एजेंसी है जो हर तरह के हंगामी हालात में अमेरिका के सिटीजन्स को तहफ़्फ़ुज़ फराहम करने के लिए बनाई गई है। ये एजेंसी 1 अप्रैल 1969 में बनाई गई थी। इसका मेन मकसद इमरजेंसी में लोगों को तहफ़्फ़ुज़ फराहम करना था, मगर 2013 में अमेरिका के गुज़िश्ता प्रेसिडेंट ओबामा ने फीमा को एक्सप्लेन करते हुए इसे नया नाम दिया और इसका मकसद भी एक्सप्लेन किया। वेलकम टू वी आर वॉचर्स, मैं हूं अलमास जैकब और आप देख रहे हैं ओबामा एक्सप्लेन्स फीमा कैंप्स।
And it is stunning, particularly to hear President Obama claim the power to keep people in prison indefinitely with no charges against them, no conviction, no sentence, just imprisonment. It's particularly stunning to hear him make that claim in the middle of a speech that was all about the rule of law.
But we must do so with an abiding confidence in the rule of law. Our government was defending positions that undermine the rule of law to ensure that they are in line with the rule of law.
प्रेसिडेंट ओबामा ने प्रोलॉन्ग्ड डिटेंशन का नाम लेते हुए एक्सप्लेन किया कि अमेरिका को बाहर से ज्यादा, अलकायदा वगैरह से ज्यादा अमेरिका के अंदर से खतरा है। इसीलिए फीमा डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ होमलैंड सिक्योरिटी के अंडर काम करती है। डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ होमलैंड सिक्योरिटी पुलिस की एक ऐसी मिलिटराइज्ड ट्रेन्ड टीम है जो किसी भी नोटिस के बिना अमेरिका को टेररिज्म से महफूज रखने के लिए किसी के भी घर में घुसकर उसे गिरफ्तार या गोली मार सकते हैं। ओबामा के नजदीक हर वो शख्स टेररिस्ट है जो गवर्नमेंट की पॉलिसीज के खिलाफ फ्रीडम ऑफ स्पीच को यूज करके बोलता है। ओबामा ने चर्चेस को फोर्स किया कि वो गे और लेस्बियन शादियां करवाएं, और आज अमेरिका में ये शादियां चर्चेस में करवाई जा रही हैं। जिन चर्चेस ने नकाब पढ़ाने से इनकार किया उनको कोर्ट में ले जाकर बेइज्जत किया गया और LGBT राइट्स का कानून बनाकर चर्चेस को फोर्स किया गया कि वो ये शादियां करवाएं। मजीद ओबामा के नजदीक हर वो शख्स जो रिलीजियस है वो टेररिस्ट है। हर वो शख्स जो एंड टाइम प्रोफेसीज के बारे में जिक्र करता है वो टेररिस्ट है। ओबामा ने एक्सप्लेन किया कि इससे पहले कि ये टेररिस्ट कुछ भी करें, इनको गिरफ्तार करके डिटेंशन कैंप्स में यानी फीमा कैंप्स में रखा जाए और इनको री एजुकेट किया जाए। ये बिल्कुल टॉम क्रूज की एक मूवी माइनॉरिटी रिपोर्ट के जैसा है, जिसमें टॉम क्रूज उन लोगों को अरेस्ट करता है जिन पर शक होता है कि ये किसी का मर्डर करने वाला है, यानी गुनाह करने पर सजा नहीं बल्कि गुनाह करने से पहले ही गुनाह की सजा सुना देना। प्रोलॉन्ग डिटेंशन भी इसीलिए फीमा के साथ मुंसलिक की गई है क्योंकि इस दुनिया के एलीट्स किसी को भी अपने रास्ते में आता नहीं देखना चाहते। ओबामा के मुताबिक किसी भी शख्स पर शक उसकी डेली एक्टिविटीज को देखकर किया जा सकता है, जैसे वो फेसबुक पर क्या पोस्ट करता है, यूट्यूब पर क्या देखता है, इवन लोगों के सेल फोन रिकॉर्ड्स भी देखे जा सकते हैं कि वो किससे क्या क्या बातें करता है। खुशकिस्मती से ये कानून पाकिस्तान या इंडिया में लागू नहीं होता, मगर जैसे हालात चल रहे हैं मुझे लगता है अगले 5 सालों में ये कानून यहाँ भी मुतारिफ करवा दिया जाएगा, क्योंकि हमारी हुकूमतें मगरिब से मुतासिर होकर, उनकी तरक्की से, उनकी टेक्नोलॉजी से मुतासिर होकर उन्हें अंधाधुन फॉलो करती हैं। इस प्रोलॉन्ग डिटेंशन का दुरानिया कितना होगा?
I was pulled to the side road, which was a new cut gravel dirt road in front of a business, a builder supply business, actually top-notch builder supply in Madison, Georgia. To my right, this was previously was a soybean field, and this little new cut road divided this field, and the right side of the road was filled with which I thought was portable toilets. I never looked at them that close. same in color, maybe black, but which was an odd color. And I was sitting there going over my notes, and a van pulled alongside of me that turned out to be the property owner. And he greeted me, and he was by himself, and so we had a good little dialogue there, and I asked him about the field of black boxes. What were they? Because I'd never seen anything like that. And his statement was that if he told me, I would be one of few people in Madison, Georgia that knew about them. And he says they're disposable coffins, I believe he told me. And he says there's 100, at that time, he said there was 125,000 there. And they were stacked, he told me, 15 high. I asked him who owned them, and he stated that the CDC owned them and that they were leasing the land, leasing his land for storage. And he said his brother worked with the CDC in Atlanta and had been asked by the CDC to do a 3-year extension to place temporary morgues all across the nation.
So in January of this year, 2005, we decided to drive to beautiful Madison, Georgia, and take a look for ourselves. It was on a Sunday and no one was around, with the exception of this one pickup truck that was coming out the narrow road that we were going in on next to this field. We flagged down the pickup truck, and it was providential that the driver of this pickup truck turned out to be the son of the man that owned this field. So naturally, we started asking him questions. And he told us that not long ago, there had been as many as 500,000 of these grave liners or disposable coffins. We asked him for permission if we could look around, and he said yes, so we did.
We're just getting an idea for the size of these boxes. What could these boxes be used for? Well, they're called casket liners. And that's an interesting term, isn't it? It's a casket liner. When I first heard the term casket liner, I thought perhaps a lining for a casket. But this is too big to be on the inside of a casket. So certainly this could be used as a casket. This is an inexpensive casket. And you can see the size here. There's lots of room. I think my friends here, we could all probably get inside. It might be a little cozy, but we'd fit just fine. Which tells me that these liners can be used for more than just one. And one more time, what kind of liners are these?
Casket liners.
These are casket liners.
That's what the man said.
That's what the man told us. And we're told that there are about, well, there were about 500,000 out here.
Later, as I went back to my home office, I spoke of it there, and of course, people usually don't want to hear too much about this kind of thing. So it's never been mentioned, publicly, except just here and there, till I went to a luncheon, a fundraiser for Representative Saxby Chambliss. He was running for his second term for the U.S. House of Representatives. And it was a crowd, probably 100, maybe 150. It was congressmen, senators, state senators, and mayors. There was one table we probably had 2 3-star generals and a couple of 1-star with their spouses. So it was a real high-powered meeting. But the keynote speaker was a congressman, and I don't remember his name. He'd just been in the House for a long time, and he was the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. And so he just spoke in behalf of Representative Chambliss and the importance of having him on board to be reelected due to our threats. But it had to do with the nuclear devices that was missing from the old Soviet Union, and it had gotten into terrorist hands, and it was, the emphasis was on the critical state that we face in this country, and he said we could lose tens of millions of people in the next decade, and he used those terms, due to a nuclear strike on U.S. soil. And I was sitting there, and it became very clear to me that that could very well explain why just weeks, I mean, could be 2 to 3 weeks prior to that meeting, that I had stumbled upon these, at that time, 125,000 disposable liners or caskets or coffins or whatever they could be termed as in that soybean field in Madison, Georgia.
Now what we've just seen is one United States city outside, this is Atlanta, it has a metropolitan population area of roughly 4 million people. So this is one field outside of one U.S. city, and the brother of the man that owns this field, that the government is leasing this field from to store these disposable coffins. This brother was given 3 years to set up temporary morgues around the country. Now we found the website that we think these disposable coffins were made at, and we noticed that the lids that they're advertising on the website were rounded. But the lids, hundreds of thousands of lids there. The lids we found, folks, were flat, and they were reinforced. You know what that could mean? You can stack them on top of each other. That's a lot neater to stack them in disposable coffins than what we saw after the tsunami, when we would see bulldozers digging holes and taking bodies and pushing bodies into holes. America can stomach this much better.
Hi everybody. Right, well, as you'll see, this is the equipment that's been fitted by councils across the country. This is showing us, we've had a whistleblower send us the information, and obviously we've got a box delivered by a whistleblower at one of the councils, alright? Because obviously the people are very concerned in the lighting departments about what this equipment is, and I've been asked to actually review it. Because this is a weapon system, alright? It's nothing more than a weapon. Now I know it's masquerading as a light, but it's a weapon. Alright, so let's just show you. Let's just break this whole thing down and show people what this is. Alright? I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to take this piece, this antenna piece to pieces. Alright, people have seen it before, they've seen the breakdown. Alright, let's just unloosen this piece here. Alright, let's just break this down and let's show people what this is. Alright, this is the Harvard piece of technology. Obviously, that's the antenna. That's a scanner, it's radar. It's a radar piece of equipment. You can see that. This has got the 450 volt capacitor on it. And you see the cabling. It's really important to see that cabling. This is the delivery system. Alright? This is an extremely dangerous piece of hardware. This is a single element, and they're 31,875. A lot of people making complaints to the council now, and making complaints where they're being lied to on a regular basis about this technology. So the councils are lying about what this is, let's just show people this is not a dipole antenna. Look, it's a high gain dielectric lens antenna. Alright, it's in a little bit better shape than the other one that we've shown the video on, but that is an illegal piece of equipment. It's not a Part 15 FCC approved piece of equipment. This can target acquire. It's radar. That's a scanner. Alright, it's a scanning antenna. They are illegal. Anybody thinks that councils have the right to scan into your home are mistaken. That's an offence in law. Alright, let's just pop that back, because people have seen that breakdown before, and they've also seen this breakdown before. What's really important is to have a look at this bit of hardware. Now this box is actually being made so you can't get into it. Alright, it's a sealed unit which just had to be taken to pieces. Obviously we've got to be careful with this because it's got to get sent back, because it's got to go back in the stores. What I'm going to show people, this is the hardware, this is the delivery system, this is coming from these units here. This is the delivery system to the weapon, alright? That's the delivery system to the weapon. This is the cabling, because I've had a couple of foolish people, absolute ignorance. That's the cabling to the LED streetlights. As you'll see, they're very thin. They're not that thin because they don't carry a great deal of power, and they won't burn out. However, this piece of cabling is pretty powerful stuff, and it has to be because you've got a 450 volt capacitor in this bit, but you've also got a number of 450 volt capacitors on the board. These are not for the LEDs. This is the LED delivery system here. Alright? There's transformers on here to reduce the power going to these small cables which fit into this for the LEDs. Alright? You do not need this type of capacity. Only a fool, only a very, very ignorant fool would even pretend that this is some type of ballast. Alright, these are LEDs for the ignorant. This isn't a fluorescent lamp needing ballast to put a lot of energy in. We all know that LEDs operate on very, very small amounts of energy, so they do not need. So this is a step down to these small cables. However, this is a step up to this delivery system, because obviously if you're going to use a weapon, it needs to have a bit of poke, it needs to have a bit of power about it. Alright, so that fits to there. This then goes to this, and obviously that's the 450 volt capacitor. Alright, you've seen it in the close-up breakdowns before, and this is the weapons delivery system. Alright, that's the high gain antenna, illegal high gain antenna. Number of people have contacted Northumbria police about the genocide that's been committed on the people in Gateshead as we speak. Lots of people. So we'll be progressing that, because I was called by Northumbria police about this, and obviously I'm still waiting for a senior investigating officer to contact me about this weaponry and how outrageous this is, that a council can fit an unregulated, untested, illegal piece of equipment on a bit of street lighting. You've got to remember, Schrader have their own controller. It's not Harvard. They've got a totally different controller to that. It was called Owlet. It's not this. This is a weapon system. That's the difference. It's not for controlling the lights, and that's why the lights are on all the time. But here's the other part of a weapon. I'm going to show you in here. These are bare elements. These are focused lenses. Alright? They're focused lenses. See the small cables? Don't need a lot of power. Not like the delivery system for the weapon. Alright? For the antenna. It's a weapon. These are very small cables, because these do not need a lot of power. They don't need anything near 450 volts or a 3,300 watt relay. Anybody that says that is either a liar, a fool, or just indoctrinated to the point where really they're pretty useless. These are bare elements. There is no protection, there's no diffuser. These are illegal. These are a category 2 optical radiation emission system. They're lenses, so what they do, that creates a focus point. These are basically lasers. So that bank of lasers there, in the 450, 460 nanometers, these are phosphor coated, and that phosphor wears off over time. So these become more toxic. They become more toxic, and they will kill. They'll blind people. They cause retinal cell stress, retina cell death, and they will blind an awful lot of people if they don't wear protective eyewear. All right. So this is the equipment. This is a blatant weapons program. It is not a street light. These are not incandescent lights. These are part of a weapons program. Make no mistake about it. And we can prove it. Fortunately, we have the evidence now. The actual undisputed evidence of this equipment being here to do harm to the citizen and not, as we've been told, like, that's why the lights are rubbish. That's why everybody doesn't like them. That's why they're putting them up on motorways. These are part of the smart city agenda. This is a radar scanner. So when it sees you coming, it can actually increase or reduce the pulse rate. That pulse rate modulation, called flicker modulation, can be weaponized. It can be strobed and it can be weaponized at any particular time through this equipment. Now, they're now replacing it for something that's not as blatantly a weapon. All right, they're replacing it now with some other piece of equipment at a multi-million-pound deployment equipment that's just not as obviously a weapon as this is, and that's the reason for the cover-up. So this is evidence for the courts to show that Gateshead Council and others are trying to commit genocide on the people. I'm still waiting for Northumbria Police's senior investigating officers to come and see me so I can avail them of all the information in relation to the assault and the harm that this is going to be caused to the people. This is unbelievable. This is uninsurable. Uninsurable technology, right? Councils have a duty of care to the people. This is untested, unproven, experimental in breach of the Nuremberg Code. This is absolutely outrageous how this has actually ended up happening. And what we must do, people have to get involved, wake others up. This is not what you've been told it is, or what the people who are fitted have been told. Because not only have they been misinformed, everybody else has. And the no-risk document that was sent out by Gateshead Council that basically says this is no risk. All optical radiation's a risk. That's just as a matter of fact. This just shows how ignorant and how much of a cover-up and a conspiracy to cover up their outrageous deployment of this unproven, untested, unregulated, in breach of Nuremberg technology. A true crime against humanity. A true crime against humanity. Hi everybody. Right, well, as you'll see. Hi everybody. Right, well, as you'll see.
Nå kommer det nye 5G-nettet til Telenor. 5G kalles neste generasjons mobilnett. Med 5G så kan du da streame, surfe og spille raskere enn du noensinne har gjort. Det vil også åpne for uante muligheter for samfunnet og bedrifter. Men hvor raskt er det egentlig? Det skal vi finne ut av nå. Skal vi kjøre en liten speedtest?
Ja. Nå skal vi se. Go. Vi er oppe på 800. Hva fort?
Skal vi se hvor fort det går å loade en YouTube-film? Ja. I 4K. Spol litt frem og tilbake, dere snill.
Stoppa ikke engang. Gikk rett på. Utrolig raskt. Ingen ventetid? Nei, ingenting. Ikke noe legging, ingenting.
Nå kan dere prøve å laste ned favorittfilmen deres. Se hvor fort det går.
Prøv å laste ned den der på 1,5 time. Du er jo halvveis allerede. Det her er genialt. Før du skal fly, du er ferdig hytta. Jeg glemmer alltid å laste ned før at det begynner å gå ombord i flyet. Ja. Så er det mye fortere nå enn det før. Genialt.
Alt du trenger for å koble og få det nye nettet er en 5G-telefon. Kom gjerne innom oss på Telenor-butikken, så hjelper vi deg.
Hi everybody. Right, well, as you'll see, this is... Hi everybody. Right, well, as you'll see, this is... Hi, everybody. Right, well, as you'll see, this is...
Gulf of Aden, an area where pirates fishermen can suddenly appear ferocious on monstrous speedboats. Off the coast of Somalia, these pirates attack and attempt to seize mainly Western merchant ships, then demand a scandalous ransom to release them. These were the thoughts of the captain of the tanker on its way to the Indian Ocean. When suddenly from the bridge of the ship he noticed at a distance a speedboat with several armed Somali pirates, waving AK-47, approaching the tanker at high speed. The captain immediately sounded the alarm by alerting the following destroyer Admiral Popov of the arrival of Somalian pirates and their intentions to seize his tanker. Quickly a helicopter of the Russian destroyer arrived at the under-seizure efforts tanker, while men of a special military unit from there approached by speedboat, and jumped with ropes on deck. It was only a matter of minutes until the Somali pirates were arrested and the incident was over. They then informed the current Russian armada of the success of their response. Paradoxically, Admiral Maximovsky, chief of the Russian Navy in the North Sea, was not at his post to receive the good news. He was mysteriously disappeared together with the Russian destroyer Kruchenko. The armada began to wonder what had happened, but it seemed that no one knew that Maximovsky, having faithfully followed the orders of Russian President Vladimir Putin, had been detached. The explanation is simple. The Kremlin was alarmed by the presence of enormous naval forces in the Gulf of Aden. Russian top officials wondered for the setup of such giant operations, with the excuse of fighting the pirates. They concluded that operations such as Ocean Shield, NATO, Atlanta, EU, Combined Task Force 151, US, concealed something else. Admiral Maximovsky has been instructed to come up with answers. After investigating the Gulf of Aden, the Admiral discovered some very interesting things. He found a magnetic vortex in the region off the coast of Somalia and potentially connected to the American HARP system in Alaska. HARP is a scientific center for the investigation of the properties and behavior of the ionosphere. The possible connection of HARP with the magnetic vortex in the Gulf explains why the Russians fear that this could have dramatic effects on the North Sea. His first conclusion was that the vortex seemed to defy all the laws of physics. He concluded that the entire artifact immersed in the sea was an American development designed to attract the energy sent by HARP and disperse inside the sea. In other words, the American-built vortex in the Gulf of Aden would allow the absorption of huge amounts of energy. The energy of HARPs he diverted towards the ionosphere would fall inside the vortex. This would lead to an increase in temperature in Gulf waters. The experiment had as ultimate goal to intervene in the frozen north through the emission of energy from HARP's European counterpart in Norway, and disperse it in the sea there. But such a military force in the warm waters of the Gulf of Aden drew other people's attention. All this forced Admiral Maximovsky to set up a special team which arrived in Aden not only to investigate the phenomenon, but also to inspect the surrounding area. He plans in the destroyer Kruchenko with the help of a giant tug to maneuver the enormous and very advanced detection equipment. He hopes that this equipment they brought from Russia could this way give answers for the use of vortex inside the sea to avoid unpleasant future developments. Admiral Maximovsky believes he has a realistic first answer to the undersea experience. This system is designed to operate with HARP's radiation beams, but the station in the United States is about to shut down. Its functions and operations be transferred to its European counterpart in Tromsø in Norway. The threat to Russian submarines in the cold North Sea, along with the marine environment, is imminent. And not only, Kremlin must react quickly, along with the marine environment, is imminent. And not only, Kremlin must react quickly, along with the marine environment, is imminent. And not only, Kremlin must react quickly, along with the marine environment, is imminent. And not only, Kremlin must react quickly, along with the marine environment, is imminent. And not only, Kremlin must react quickly, along with the marine environment, is imminent. And not only, Kremlin must react quickly, along with the marine environment, is imminent. And not only, Kremlin must react quickly, along with the marine environment.
I have something here that I know is so explosive.
Welcome, Climate viewers. My name is Jim Lee from Climate Viewer News, and today is December 17th, 2014. And I just did a video on HARP and the SBX sea-based X-band radar and NEXRAD, and I got a lot of questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a series on HARP called HARP 101, and all the videos will be tagged that way. So please follow along, and we're going to learn a lot about HARP. Now, I put this out over 2 years ago. I redid it a couple months ago, and I'm going to break it down for you guys in a video. I was hoping that somebody else would cover this, but I guess if you want something done right, you've got to do it yourself. So here we are. This is my HARP page over on Climate Viewer News. If you click HARP at the top, it will bring you to climateviewer.com/HARP. So here we are. And what you're going to see is a little bit about the HARP facility and how there are many more like it. It will bring you to a research timeline that breaks down the history of space weather modification and plasma seeding. And then a ionospheric heater definition. They are powerful high-frequency transmitters that must be 2.8 to 10 megahertz that induces controlled temporary modification to the electron temperature at desired altitude. Now we're going to get into all the technical details of that, but I wanted you guys to quickly see the HARP page and our HARP map. So we're going to get into all the HARP map. I Google that, and you come up to the images, and this is what you get. You get a couple pictures that really don't tell you anything. HARP map, dots, and city locations. These are actually digisons over here. I went and I mapped all this stuff out. I was like, well, this is all kind of confusing. This is actually way closer to the truth. This guy nailed it. But let's really break them down. This is a digison map. Now, a digison is an ionosign. They bounce radio waves off the ionosphere to diagnose it. This is verification for HARP modifications, and obviously what the sun is doing to the ionosphere. So the sun is constantly bending and molding our ionosphere. It flutters around, and these guys track them. Let's take a look at that real quick. Over here, I am on Climate Viewer 3D, and if you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see places. Over here, on that, and then come down to ionospheric heaters, Super Darn and ISCAT. Click on that, and then you'll see all of those digison locations. Now they're here. Each one of these green marks, they correlate with. And then you'll see all of those. Now this is very hard to find, and I'm a bit of a retard for going through all this, but I want to be thorough.
For comparison,
there's all of
a human hair is 60 to 100 microns thick, and asbestos fiber is a couple of microns thick. The other essential component
they're more seeing what this other map. This says map of world HARP facilities. This is the most widely shared version of it. This is map. It's map. But it really, again, doesn't tell you anything. This is HARP, HARP China, HARP Russia, HARP ISCAT, HARP UK. None of these are HARP. One HARP. It is called the High Frequency Active Auroral Program. It is in Alaska. And HARP is actually, you want to be technical about it, all of this together is HARP. The thing everybody's talking about is called the Ionospheric Research Instrument, and it's right here. It's 180 towers that broadcast electricity in the sky to alter our ions, modify our alter. And we're going to get into that right now. So, this is the only HARP there is. There is only one HARP. It is now closed. They're trying to give it away. And why would they do that? Because there are plenty more around. Why would they putting them on boats? And they're building a much bigger HARP in Norway by 2016. Why would they do that? It's going to be 100 gigawatts. HARP at its best, on its best day, was 5 gigawatts estimated radiated power. Now, 3.6 million watts goes into this battery. They pump it from, they have diesel engines that convert the electricity and shoot it up in the sky. And the output is much higher than what goes here. We've got 5 gigawatts, that's billion watts. 3.6 million watts go in. 5 billion watts worth comes out. Now, over in Norway, the new IceCat 3D is going to be 100 billion watts. HARP, 5 billion. IceCat 3D, 100 billion gigawatts. And that can modify the weather for certain. Bernard Eastland, John Hersher, and everybody who talks about it agrees. 100 gigawatts is what you need to also the jet stream. They're building it in Norway. So let's hop over to Norway. What does that look like? Over in Tromsø, Norway, you can see that they have 3 arrays here. I found this in a PDF. I cut this out in Photoshop and overlaid it in Google Earth so you can see the arrays. But of course, each one of these icons are like little web pages, and I taught myself some HTML just to learn all this. And you can see every single one of these icons. 144 cross-dipole arrays, 5.3 to 8 megahertz. That's in the sweet spot. 2.8 to 10 what you need to modify the ionosphere the way we're talking about. So here's the picture. There's some wires. Lots of photos on that. Instrument details from the Cedar at UCAR. Tons and tons of details. Everything referenced. I know what the hell I'm talking about. And I'm being that way because I have been down this road. I have sent this to every guy I've met that talks about HARP and nobody wants to share it with us. Being that way we are. Anyway, and there's the IceCat 3D details. It's going to be an array that's going to cross most of Norway. Anyway, and there's the IceCat. And these are receiver arrays down here in Big Boy. An upgrade to this. That's coming pretty soon. Then we have High Pass, the High Power Auroral Stimulation Observatory. This was predecessor to HARP. Before it was up here, it was in Ohio, or at the Plattsville Atmospheric Observatory. Their secret little hideaway for testing electromagnetic crazy stuff in the middle of a big fracking lab. As you can see here, all of these are fracking landing pads. Nobody in their right mind would ever go out here, so why not put a HARP radar? All of these are out here. So that's what they do with this place. High Pass used to be here. They've got some antennas up in this place now. God knows what they're doing, but if you guys are crazy about possible weather location, that's what they do with this place. That's super creepy. So High Pass is up there, and then we have Sura over in Russia. This is their big boy. High Pass is up there. Now, all of this stuff I'm talking about right now is covered in art. All of this stuff I'm talking about is covered in work. And you can scroll through here. All of the details I just gave you. And all of this are all of these available here. And 190 megawatt output. So we're talking about millions of watts. I don't know if you guys remember the movie Back to the Future. This is what I like to like. Doc Brown said 1.21 gigawatts. We need 1.21 gigawatts of electricity. Doc Brown, 1.21 gigawatts is what he said a light was. Doc Brown, 1.21 gigawatts. HAARP is 5 gigawatts. And ISCAT gigawatts is 5 light gigawatts. That's a lot of gigawatts. HAARP is 5. So, it's pretty nuts. Then we have the brand new ones coming up in Arecibo. Now, you guys have all seen this in the movie. It's pretty nuts. This bad boy has been in a lot of movies. But did you know that they're building an ionosphere heater down at the bottom? Did you know that? Yes, they are. They had one since back in the 70s. And it was destroyed during an hurricane. In a hurricane. Hurricane Georgie in 98. And now they've built a new one. And it's going to have a 200 megawatt output in the sweet spot, 5.1 to 8 megahertz. And it's only got 6 really, really big. It's got in the sweet spot. Yeah, so 25 meters tall. This is going to be interesting. So now, why would they, and this is kind of odd, because you look at it and you go, why would they put an ionosphere heater here? All of the ionosphere heaters seem to be up here. They all seem to be up here near the North Pole. So it's a little further down. But then you've got these middle bands. What are they doing? What's that all about? I was really curious to figure this out. And it turns out that really there's only 2 ways to modify the ionosphere. And this was very surprising. I've been researching this for 3 years and I did not find this surprising a couple months ago, maybe 3-4 months ago. And that's what this article's about, so let's just get to it. There's the Arecibo antenna, it's just so you guys can see it. And there's a diagram. It's going to have a cast grain antenna net there's on top of it. And here are the antennas. That's a person. Very, very big. Sura, very Tromso, video on Tromso, and very, very. Okay, Elf Generation 101. This is what everybody's talking about. I want this to be very clear. This is what everybody's talking about. Elf Generation 101. Very clear. What they're doing is creating a virtual antenna in the sky that radiates extremely low frequency signals that travel worldwide and can be heard in the deepest depths of our ocean. This virtual antenna is called an ionospheric Alvin resonator. Now, I'm going to give you these scientific terms because if you're interested in doing these scientific terms and finding out more about it, the only way for you to be able to do that is to use the proper terms because Google doesn't understand weird terms. Okay? So, and there are references with these. You can see right there's one. So, and there are bottom. Read the references. The references are coming from sppastro.u, University of Maryland.edu. This is Dennis Papadopoulos. This guy is knee deep in HAARP. Just Google Dennis Papadopoulos and get started. Let's go back. The ionospheric Alvin resonator is using the ionosphere as it is. So it could be considered a geophysical weapon. That's a term that has been used, thrown around quite a bit. So what happens? In addition to creating an IAR, heating the ionosphere with high-frequency radio waves will produce alpha waves and magnetosonic MS waves. Now, what are those? These are geomagnetic pulsations. Okay? Now, there's a very technical section right here for the science-minded, but what you really want to pull from this is standing oscillations of the geomagnetic. 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 Standing oscillations of the geomagnetic.
Ja, jeg tenker vi avslutter der. Dette var fortsatt en test. Ja, jeg tenker vi avslutter der. Dette var fortsatt en test. avslutter der.